Well, good morning, everyone. We're very glad to have Representative Van Taylor here with us. Van is a member of St. Michael, and he is a U.S. Congressman, and we are thrilled that he had time in his schedule to join us for this special adult forum. And Van, welcome. Really glad to see you.
Thank you.
Even though we can't be in person.
It's great to be with you, Chris, and it's great to be with everybody who's watching this. Very exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. So this is a great series that we're doing, and we're looking at faith in different environments, different professions, different identities. And we thought, oh my, it would be great to hear from you and to see just how faith impacts the work that you do. And so some people may not know that this is your first term as a U.S. representative. Right? And that Van represents the Plano community. He and his wife, Ann, have 3 daughters. And so he really is a real person doing this really good work. And so I think that's important for everyone to know that context. And Van's been connected to St. Michael for a very long time. I'm looking forward to this. So Van, to kick us off, I'd love for you to tell us just a little about you, your connection to St. Michael, and what it was like to transition from state representative to U.S. representative.
Sure. Well, so I'm Van Taylor. I'm a 7th generation Texan. My daughter, Susie, is the 5th consecutive generation of my family who was born in Dallas County. Wow. And so my mother, who goes to St. Michael's, and I have a whole bunch of cousins that go to St. Michael's. I actually, my parents actually took me in swaddling clothes to St. Michael's. So it has truly been a 48-year relationship that I've had with St. Michael's. And although I did grow up in Midland, Texas, when after I was in the Marine Corps, and then I went to Harvard Business School and came back and started going to St. Michael's when I got back to Dallas. And so I've really been religious about that ever since, and have enjoyed it. And it's been a great institution and part of my life. And my 2 older daughters were both confirmed at St. Michael's. And so it is definitely a very, very important component of my faith experience. And so it's been very, very grateful for the opportunity to be there and be part of St. Michael's. So you alluded to the fact that in 2010 I was elected to the Texas House, in 2014 the Texas Senate. So I spent 8 years in the Texas legislature, which seems very normal, very very obvious career progression. It's only obvious in hindsight. When you're beginning these things, you have no idea what the future holds, but just sort of the right doors open at the right time. And so I sort of got this great time to be in the state legislature in Texas, and I have left a highly functional legislative institution, right? So the Texas legislature has passed every budget on time since 1963. They pass, around 1,500 bills in 20 weeks. 99.9% of them are bipartisan, to a place that passes 50 bills a year, hasn't passed a budget in 22 years. And I have yet to vote on a budget, to put it in perspective. So I'm going to a place that's completely defective as an institution. And I wake up every morning trying to figure out how to restore the republic and make, Article 1 function again. And it's not that they rewrote Article 1, the rules operating Article 1 within the institution have been rewritten to the point that it can't really function. So working on that. That's what gets me up in the morning.
That's remarkable that you would have had such a functional experience to go to one that isn't. And I imagine that's got to be kind of frustrating, almost even disappointing, because I know you don't want to waste your time. You want to do work, like you want to get stuff done.
Well, I think that you have to look at that challenge as so important, right? You have to say, wow, it is so important for the future of our republic to have a functional legislative process, which we don't have now. And seeing the frailties and just the cultural understanding that, we're not going to pass a budget. There's no expectation of passing a budget. There's very little expectation of passing basic blocking and tackling bills. There's very little, very little is done. It's really quite surprising at how ineffective the U.S. House of Representatives is relative to what it could be or has been, right? And so what inspires me is we can bring this back. We can restore Article 1. We can make Congress work again. We can have it solve problems. The solutions are there. It's just a system that can't implement the solutions. It's not that no one knows what to do about immigration, or nobody knows what to do about healthcare, or nobody knows what to do about gun violence, or nobody knows what to do about tax policy. Quite the contrary. There are lots of really good ideas about how to fix a lot of those things. You're just in a system that very rarely lets the answer get out.
Well, Van, it's very interesting. I'd love to almost pause that and then bring in your own faith journey a little bit and then put them together.
Sure.
Because I know that people should know that, there are lots of people who are members of churches and not active. And Van was not that person. Van was at church. I mean, Van came. The girls were there, and so I think that shows your commitment to your own faith, your own walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love for you to take just a minute and tell us just a little bit about why that has been important to you and remains important to you. And then I want to bring that back in with the work that you do.
Sure. Well, I think, in life, we are confronted with moral decisions. That was, it was particularly true when I was a Marine in combat. So I led a platoon in Iraq, and we were the first platoon into Iraq for my brigade on D-Day in 2003. Well, they put the reservists out front because they know they'll do a good job. But and actually in preparing for that, one of the things that I made a conscious choice of doing was going to Bible study and really, focusing on faith and focusing on, because for me, and combat's a very personal experience. But for me, the hardest decisions I made were the moral ones, not about whether what I wanted to do was moral, but what was moral. And so I think faith really helps speak to that. And in public life, in a legislative life, you're voting, and you're voting on issues, and you want to do the right thing for your own values. You want to do the right thing for your constituents, for the people that you work for, that you serve. And so it's not that and faith guides you in that discussion about, well, what should I do? What is the right thing for my district? What is the right thing to do by my own principles? And so faith guides you. And I think it's important to take the time to think about faith and to think about it actually more abstractly, because that then ultimately lays an intellectual foundation for making those practical decisions. And the decisions, unfortunately, are made with imperfect information. You vote on something, and I remember after the legislative session, people would sit down and say, "What was the most important thing you did this session?" And my answer would be, "We'll know in 10 years." I can guess for you right now what is the biggest thing that I did, but you know what? It's really going to take some time to see how important those decisions are. And that's true in life. I mean, whether we're leading a business or a medical practice or a faith practice, you're making literally hundreds of decisions every day. And what are the most important decisions? What are the big, well, you don't really know. And you can make catastrophic mistakes that you may not know for years, right? You might find years later that, oh, wow, that was a terrible choice. I had no idea. But again, going back to what faith is a foundation that you can rely on, that is important, and that it's really important to make sure that your faith walk is something that you take seriously, because it will help you to make the best decisions, for you, for your family, and for whatever your vocation is. It will help you make better decisions than that.
So can you give us maybe an example or two of when your personal faith has pretty directly impacted decisions that you've made professionally?
Well, I think that, I have always been inspired by Jesus Christ. He was a man who spoke truth to power, who was guided by his own belief in who he was and what he was trying to do. And he was, and so I guess John chapter 9 is probably my favorite story in the Bible, when he healed a blind man. It's a long story. It's actually one of the longer stories in the Bible, but he healed a blind man. And then the Pharisees said, well, you did it on a Sunday, so you're a sinner. We need to execute you. And you're like, wait a minute. He healed a blind man, like a man who was born blind, could not see. He's been healed. He could see. That's a big deal. Like, shouldn't we be celebrating that this man is no longer blind? Like, no, we need to execute the healer because he did it on the Sabbath, so he's not really religious, and we all know that. And so it has steeled my own faith that just because people criticize you doesn't mean you're not right. And that people will find a way to criticize you if you're challenging them, because the Pharisees were threatened by Christ being the Son of God, right? By his new message was threatening their order. And so I think when I challenge the current order and say, hey, this is a broken legislative body, we need to fix it, and people criticize it and say, well, that's not, you don't really want to fix it, do you? I mean, like, these bad things could happen. You realize, no, I need to continue on with this. It's not really that their message, they're criticizing me out of self-protection, not because they see the end goal or the goodness out of it. And that has happened to me over and over in my political life, where where I try to produce a solution for a particular problem, and there are critics. There are people that say, oh, that would be terrible for the following reasons, and they don't make any sense, and like saying that healing blind people on the Sabbath is wrong. That doesn't make any sense, right? That's just who would say, no, you can't heal,
right.
I have to be blind, you can heal me tomorrow, but not today. Anyway, I'm not going to give you a specific, but just that over and over again in my public life, people have criticized and said, oh, you shouldn't handle that problem. But then realizing now I should do that. That is the right thing to do. And Christ did the right thing by healing the blind man, right? I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
Well, interestingly, part of what I've heard you say multiple times leans into this idea of connectedness. You seem very clear about your work connecting with the work of your colleagues in a way that probably speaks to the dysfunction that you're experiencing, right? I mean, one of the things I like that you said about serving in the Texas Senate is that you had 99% of these bills that you passed are bipartisan, right? And so there's this very clear acknowledgement that you have a certain identity, you have a certain set of beliefs, yet you've come together with this group of people who are all diverse, all individual, who have their own experiences, and you're all trying to move the ball down the field, and you have to do it together. I mean, you can't stand as a single person in this big body and get anything done. And so I'd love to hear more about why you seem to have a very clear commitment to work together. And I think especially in our current global environment, that's part of what people struggle with. They hear the news they want to hear and the way they want to hear it, and they speak their mind with a complete conviction in their individual opinion. And they forget that we're kind of all in this together, and we have to try and understand one another, not even necessarily agree, but understand so that we can move forward.
Sure. No, and I'm very committed to working with anybody. Typically that means across the aisle, but it also means within your own party to try to build a coalition and try to, sit down and take input and build something that will be constructive and solve a particular problem. And so that takes time and effort and building relationships and getting people's cell phone numbers. Actually, when I first got to Congress, and I still do this today, I made a commitment to myself. I'm going to spend half my time talking to Democrats and half my time talking to Republicans. And in the legislature, that was completely normal. My desk mate my second session of the Texas House, Joe Desatel was a Democrat from Orange County, Texas. And so, Joe and I had a great relationship and enjoyed sitting next to each other and convincing. And we just, had a good relationship. And no one really thought anything of the fact that Republican Van Taylor and Democrat Joe Desatel were desk mates. It was literally unremarkable. But in the U.S. House, my spending time talking to Democrats, within 2 months, the Dallas Morning News reporter tracked me down and said, "Hey, Congressman Taylor, I see you talking to Democrats. What's going on?" And I'm like, "What do you mean what's going on?" "I'm just doing my job. I'm trying to build relationships with all the members in the chamber. I'm trying to get cell phone numbers. I'm trying to, text people, 'Hey, I'm sorry about your dad passing away,' or I hope that things are better in your marriage. I know you're in a tough patch," or, just working on building those human relationships that are the foundation for actually achieving political solutions to policy problems. And literally the reporter did an article that was on the front page of Dallas Morning News, and Mr. Bipartisan, Van Taylor, Republican talks to Democrats, was literally like a headline. And I'm like, it's that bad, okay, It is that bad. And that doesn't mean I'm compromising my values or selling out or any of that. It's just, look, I'm going to work to find solutions. And that begins with building relationships. And it's interesting, other Republican members have commented like, "Wow, you've done more to build relationships." And actually, when that article came out, I will say this, I actually had half a dozen members of the U.S. House come to me, both parties, and say, I read that article and it's inspired me to be more, to build relationships. I'm going to work on a more bipartisan basis to build relationships. So in the Marine Corps, there's at the basic school, there's a motto, ductus exemplo, leadership by example. And among peers, that's the most powerful form of leadership because there's no rank, right? I mean, if you're all second lieutenants, there's nobody really in charge. And so if you can lead by example and you start building relationships, then other people see that and say, I should do that too. He's doing the right thing. I should do the right thing. And so you never go wrong setting a good example.
It's like parenting. They always say your children will do what you do, not what you say. And so leading by example is great. And I remember seeing an article with you and Colin Allred, like jogging through the Capitol, which is great because that shows, really that commitment to just being, I hate to say it, but just being a real person, right? You're beyond the role. We're all people trying to do our best. And if you spend time and get to know one another, that really works. And I think that that's one of the things that I hope St. Michaelites maintain. One of the things that attracted me to this congregation is that although there are certainly ways we are homogeneous, one of the ways we are not is in kind of our politics and our social opinions and the way that we see the world. We have everybody across the spectrum in this congregation. And we all seem to understand, I hope still, that what unifies us is so much stronger than what may divide us. That disagreements can be held without being disagreeable. And I love that because I think as a faith community, one of the first things that we need to do is acknowledge humility. We don't know everything. And I think you said it so well. You make a decision with imperfect information, and it may be 10 years before you find out if that was a good decision or not. And if it wasn't, sorry, because you did your best. And what else can you do?
Totally. Yeah, that's well said. You make the best decision you can, and you hope you're right every time, but you have to you're not going to be right every time. And you have to acknowledge that about yourself. And then sometimes more importantly, understand that about others. I always try to give my colleagues the benefit of the doubt that they're doing the best they can with the information they have. And then on some level, if I didn't take the time to explain to them why they should have done a different thing, on some level, that's my fault for not having reached out and said, "Hey, Chris, these are the following reasons I think you should have done X instead of Y."
Man, that sounds like loving kindness to me.
It's that has worked for me, and I will continue to do it.
Well, I'm glad you do it. Well, Van, I know that you have limited time, so the last thing I wanted to ask was, how can we be supportive? You know, what can we do to kind of support your political work as brothers and sisters here at your church?
Well, I just appreciate, Chris, your leadership, your faith leadership. I respect it deeply. And I just encourage you to continue to think about and pray for our country. And I will say, for those people who are fortunate enough to live in the 3rd District of Texas, which is basically the southwestern quarter of Collin County, I have a 100% meeting policy. I have met with every constituent that's ever asked to have a meeting with me for the last 10 years. And I do that because I work for you and because you've got great ideas, and that those ideas are important, and I want to hear them, and it makes me a better legislator to have that input. And I'm grateful to work for people that care enough. I think I've had 500 meetings since I was elected to Congress, so more than one every day, and that's an awesome level of input. The impressive part is not me taking the meetings, it's that many people want to meet with me and share with me what's important to them.
Well, I appreciate what you do. I think that your St. Michael family, agree or not agree, appreciates that you are part of this faith community, and know that we pray for you. We pray for all our leaders. We especially keep Anne, Laura, Helen, and Susie in our prayers. I mean, I know that I can only imagine that being in that world is a stressor, and that they need our prayers as well. So thank you for doing what you do. Keep the faith, and I hope to see you back here in person after this quarantine is over, whenever it ends.
Yeah, me too. Well, really appreciate you taking the time to do this, and what an honor to be with you.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you all for joining us. We hope that you have gotten something out of this, and that what Van does can inform decisions that you make in your own life. You know, faith impacting the work that we do is not a given. It takes work for faith to really impact decisions that we make. And those decisions, although imperfect, done with God, can help change the world. God bless you all.